All right, DJ LeRoy, we made it to 2021.
Yes, we did. Happy New Year, my brother.
Happy New
How you
Year to
doing?
you, brother.
Man,
Good,
oh
great.
man. Were you disappointed at all to see 2020 leave?
I don't think anybody. We were like 2020. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here
Yeah.
at all.
At all, at all. So you know
Yeah.
what? We want to kind of take maybe a little retrospective and talk about this year that we just left. That it was, I would say, in my lifetime, Night Watchman, unlike anyone that I've ever experienced.
Oh yeah. Hopefully, it stays in a unique category for the rest of our lives. Yes.
I mean, certainly there were some veterans who certainly knew about the pandemic of what's that 1918, the
Mm-hmm.
Spanish flu. But this one, I mean, who knew? It started out from what 45 said was a hoax to be something that was, as you say, earth shattering, earth shaking, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
so we got two wonderful guests.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, our first guest is, of course, that they are returning guests because
Mm-hmm.
remember the way that we actually kind of really get things cooking is that we have folks who've been on this show before, but more importantly have given us some vital stats
Mm-hmm.
here. And our first guest is Miss Angie Hancock of Experience Harlem. Angie,
Good morning.
Hey Angie, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy 2021, guys.
Yeah,
Great to see you in this new year.
oh, you too,
absolutely.
and
Yep.
this is going to be much better than what we just left, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It can't get worse, can it?
Well,
Um,
based on these numbers, it might get a little
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Okay,
Too many folks went home for Christmas, for the holidays. What can I say?
Yeah, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Our next guest is returning guest when we had a forum as it related to education, and that, of
Mhm.
course, is Dr. Vernee Butterfield. Come on out here.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Oh boy! So, how did you stay put during this holiday, or did you go travel?
As in travel in a silver tube that flies in the sky? No, no. We were here at our house with the people we live with, my nephew and
Mhm.
So, in other words, your pod.
my pod. Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
And,
My
and
bubble, my COVID bubble.
and I'm sure you will have a discussion with your cousin about the fact that getting a person here, getting a person there, is not the same
It's not
pod.
a pod. No, that is not. No.
Mhm.
As you say, you
So,
can't make this stuff up at all.
no, it was our quietest Christmas ever, and we didn't have our epic games and none of that stuff this year.
Mhm.
Well, as we all agree, none of us is unhappy to see 2020 leave. It was a hell of a year. Okay,
Mhm.
we probably all of us on this particular interview have done our civic duty in terms of we all voted, but yet it seems
Mhm.
as if we're still dealing with the ramifications of that particular vote. So, please give me your thoughts about the 2020 election and what is the hope going forward. Will what the 45 has done in terms of creating this atmosphere of saying fraud, and having his loyal followers ready to take up arms
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
contest this damn election?
Yeah.
What do we see going forward? What will happen here?
I mean, I feel like we said the same thing in 2016, right? When we were in disbelief that he won in the first place, and it was voter fraud and Russian interference and so forth. But while people were kicking and screaming, it stopped, right? And at one point, we just said, okay, it is what it is. The Electoral College voted him and solidified it, and so we just have to deal with the consequence of him being in this administration for 4 years. As much as we tried to, move him out of that was unsuccessful because we did not have the Senate.
Correct.
But I think, am I hopeful? Yes. And I voted for in this past election for Biden Harris, and I think that we should openly speak about politics the way we openly speak about the weather. And we should
Mhm.
get used to having that kind of a dialogue with one another. but I'm concerned that he'll be governing in Trump's America. And I think that's the biggest concern moving forward, that if January 5th does not move in our favor, it is going to be a very, very difficult 4 years. And a person who's not going to go quietly and continue to incite civil unrest is someone to be fearful of.
And
I would agree with that 200%. And I think the difference between the 2016 election, which parents in this election, is during 45's administration, he's unleashed a whole Pandora's box of unrest and lack of civility in terms of how we deal with one another, where people can feel that they can openly accuse you of things falsely. They can openly bear arms in public and threaten you. And I think there's going to be a backlash. I think, unfortunately, this is not going to go away right away. That there were over 70 million people that voted for that side of things. And that's the incredible part, that we're going to have to deal with that and get back to a place where there's just, we respect one another. We can disagree, but, respectfully disagree. And I think that that's gone. And I think, ultimately it's going to backfire on the Republicans.
Okay. It's often said that with his folks, remember when he said, I can go in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot someone and not lose any support? It seems to be really, really true. Can we actually reason with those folks, that 70 million plus that voted for him?
No, but they're dwindling.
Are they?
Yeah. So
Yes, because a lot of them are dying from COVID because they didn't use common sense. I mean, it's the level of disconnection to common sense is shocking. Even to the New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago, featuring Giuliani, Donald Jr., and people like Janine Perot, all dancing maskless in the middle of a pandemic that is roaring in Florida. And I just don't understand it. At some point in time, doesn't self-preservation kick in?
Okay.
No, but not if you believe that you're immune, right? I mean, you have somebody whose sense of all of this has been warped prior to COVID. A sense of reality is warped prior to COVID. So you put himself in that situation, who says, I got it, right? And although I believe he had it, right?
I don't believe it.
He gets I don't know that the doctors that had started to speak out at Walter Reed kind of confirmed for me that he had. I don't know, especially since one of them was excused from the hospital because he didn't agree with Trump taking the victory ride after being discharged from the hospital. I think if we hadn't seen that side of it, the doubt of him having it, I still believe it was mild. But I also believe he has access to drugs that the rest of us would never get, right? And the hope is that we all can get that kind of treatment should we move in that direction of herd immunity and people, get it and we can survive it at a larger rate. But, at this point, I think his warped sense of reality doesn't allow him to recognize the danger of that kind of behavior, right? I had to get this concoction of drugs. I do really well. I have the antibodies. Therefore, I'm immune, which you're not. You can get COVID again. And that doesn't allow you to make the best decisions, right? And then transfer to the general population whose IQ seems to be very similar to Trump, meaning his supporters. Think of, a number of people in a room. If we counted off 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 voters voted for, Trump. And so those are the same people who share this warped sense of reality. It's a hoax. It's not real. It's not that bad. The survival rate is really high, right? You have to be old. They're still sort of believing those pockets of information that are out there that are not necessarily true. We know that COVID affects all ages, right? So, I think that in that regard, that sense of making better decisions at Mar-a-Lago, we see across the country. 2 mega churches in New Mexico the other day, packed for Christmas service, Christmas candles and Silent Night, packed
Wow.
solid. If you turned out the lights, it would have looked like a rap concert with lighters up, right? And then we have a Republican Christmas party here in Queens, and
Oh yeah, I saw that.
at the conga line, and the gentleman said, "I sat off to the side by myself and ate by myself, and I wasn't on the conga line. How did I still get it?" What? You're in an enclosed room with no man, right? So that what sense of reality doesn't allow you to make informed decisions the way that we should.
Wow, that's stunning. It really is.
Exactly.
So going into January, these COVID numbers are there. It's almost a foregone conclusion that they're going to continue to go up. I believe we will top 400,000 dead in January. Look how fast we went from 300,000 to now it's like 333, maybe it's 340 by now.
Yeah.
And it's averaging like 15 to 17,000 people a week are dying, and we haven't factored in the Christmas travel numbers and what that's going to do.
Not yet. That's right.
Nor the cases that are not reported, right? Because people don't go to the hospital, or they get turned away because there's no beds, or their oxygen are okay. It's not warranting, an admission to a hospital. So those numbers are probably even higher at this point already.
And we're in many places we're approaching that that Italy type situation where there's the medical resources are stretched so thin that doctors are literally have to make decisions on who lives or dies just based on lack of available resources. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Totally. Now we did as we say we've settled the presidential race. We already said that. However, we know what's happening in Georgia, which is very, very significant.
Right.
If we do not get those 2 seats in Georgia, will it be Obama revisited again by Mitch McConnell?
Yep.
Or with the optimism that Uncle Joe says that he has as it relates to being able to work across the aisles, will we see a shift? And then will we certainly know that it wasn't because Barack was a Democrat, but he was a black man.
Right.
And will that be the thing? Angie.
Right. I think definitely during Barack's administration, we saw he's a black man backlash. And I think 45's presidency is evidence of that, as well as evidence of a number of other things in terms of just pure greed and just, lack of I won't say the word that I'm thinking, but I think you understand where I'm going with it. And so I think that there are Republicans that, for fear of 45's, backlash, that they kind of stayed along party lines. But I think there's at least a couple of them that his values do not align with traditional Republican values, and that they understand what needs to be done, and they understand the crisis that we're in. And so I think we're already starting to see some of them break camp. And, some of that is political strategy in terms of, looking out for their own survival. But some of it is, really, we are in a crisis that we are not addressing, and 400,000 dead is insane. How is it that we are number 2 in the world now in terms of deaths, behind Brazil? That is just
yeah.
Yeah.
2 or 3, but whatever it is, it's unacceptable given, theoretically our supposed access to education and healthcare and so forth. But we've been fed conflicting rhetoric for the last year around how to deal with this pandemic, when the playbook had been established prior to them coming in. It was anticipated that we were going to have a world pandemic at some point.
Correct.
There were a number of signs that were pointing there. When we look at what happened with SARS and H1N1, there were opportunities for us to take this seriously and get prepared, and we didn't heed the warning.
Mm-hmm.
No, because it was about political gain, right?
Right.
So, and maintaining his seat. Hence why the fight to hold on to the White House for the next 4 years, because if I come out of there, I'm in deep trouble. Depending upon the state, right? He can't be tried for anything he's done as president, but New York, let's pray they're sitting on some good stuff, right? And can go after this individual. But I would agree with you, Angie. I think that the notion of having paid attention to self-preservation in my political seat of much more importance than almost 400,000 dead in a country that boasts itself to be so great.
Right.
Have an infrastructure that should allow for a much better response that was already set up prior to this administration, but was dismantled. Let's hope know that 2021 may not be as positive as we'd like it to be.
I think for sure it's going to start off kind of rocky. I would say we put your seatbelts on, because we're going into a perfect storm and we've got an economic storm, as we have eviction protections coming off. You have a very paltry stimulus package. And you have a bunch of people who are still out of work, 6 million people who moved into poverty over the COVID pandemic. So you've got that. You still have a raging pandemic. So how do you even jumpstart the economy when we still can't move around yet? Travel is not going to be open for a little bit. And until we can flatten the curve, which is still going up because of the holiday numbers, we're really it's really going to be hard to see a turnaround, and then that's why the political situation is so important, because until we have a coordinated federal response to all of these issues, it's very, very difficult to see a clear path out of chaos, and even descending into certain aspects of this that could be worse than 2020 was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Angie, with what you do in terms of your work with Experience Harlem, right? So you're on the ground. You work directly with the small business community in Harlem and beyond. What have you been able to observe in terms of the economic impacts of COVID?
Oh my gosh, it has been disastrous. I was taking a walk through the neighborhood the other day. It was really cold, and I'm like, well, I'm not skiing anymore. Let me just use that ski gear because I need to get outside and move. I've been in the house for like 72 hours straight, and the number of storefronts that have closed is incredible. And New York was already in a commercial space crisis, whether it admitted it or not. And it's not just in Harlem, it's citywide. I remember just before the pandemic, riding up Madison Avenue from Midtown through the Upper East Side, where you used to have like all of these boutiques. Those have been wiped out. And so, it's that same story. When Main Street, catches a cold, Black folks catch the flu, except we have pneumonia on just so many different levels. And I think some of the short-term resources that have been in place, they kept folks alive through the end of this year. But with the recent shutdown of an inside dining of restaurants, we're now facing a full winter of fighting this pandemic, and the average small business simply lacks the resources to get through this. But what I see coming out of this is a whole new renewed sense of, or renewed level of commitment to what does it really take to help small businesses survive, and what does it really take to help those that are disproportionately affected help them survive. And I think, one of, the things we mentioned earlier coming out of the election and the lessons of the election, it is without a doubt that the Democrats would not be where they are if it were not for Black people and specifically Black women. And so it is for us to hold them accountable. And I think there's a whole new wave of, how do we hold these people accountable for their promises in exchange for our votes? And I think it is upon us to make sure that we go out and we are getting and demanding the resources that we need for our communities and for our small businesses.
Okay. And going further on that, now you're responsible for Food and Drink Boulevard. You're responsible for Lenox Avenue Sizzles. They were your signature events, right?
Yes.
When we could actually meet in person, we could do our thing. We could share cocktails, the whole thing. How have you had to pivot during COVID? And
sure.
Events like that.
Sure. So we're just coming off of a huge month-long holiday campaign that was a hybrid. And it contained virtual events as well as in-person shopping. And so it was the extent to which a venue could socially distance, of course, mask, hand sanitizer. You could go shop at a restaurant. You could go to a restaurant. And fortunately, the weather, even though we had a fairly significant storm in December, we still, for the most part, had a December where you could dine outdoors. There's been a huge effort around outdoor structures that have been built. You have the Renaissance Pavilion that's been built over into the Strivers Row area. You have the igloos that have been placed along Frederick Douglass Boulevard. So we just need more of those structures along the way. And we need, we have to commit to, even though, we're all indoors more, we're cooking more, but once or twice a week, order takeout from your local restaurant and invite your friends to do the same. But more importantly, continuing to put pressure upon our electeds to get the resources that these businesses are going to need in order to survive a full winter of the pandemic.
Gotcha.
So for New Year's Eve, I patronized a restaurant that opened up in 2020 on Lenox Avenue, Tito's Barbecue Station.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe Tito's has the best ribs in Harlem at the moment.
All right, that's a big statement.
So
yeah, I mean, really, NightWatchman, is that a plug there or what?
It's definitely a plug, and I'm definitely planning to have him on the show. But I'm just look. We got to support first of all a brother who opens up a restaurant in 2020 on Lenox Avenue. It's a level of bravery that I've got to give him credit for, and the food was good. So he is of Jamaican and Panamanian descent.
Okay.
Grew up in LA, but learned his barbecue in Dallas. So it's real barbecue.
Yes,
yeah.
And I believe he can compete with the local. Our local barbecue is all right.
Right.
But I think in another environment he'd be doing great. But right now, he's obviously just trying to get some traction. So, let's check him out.
Okay.
Yeah, let's put people his way. And he's also spent some time in Chicago, and Chicago.
Oh, that's
ribs.
close to your heart. Close to your heart, right there.
Yeah.
So.
Who joined us? Yes,
we have Glenn Gilliam, the OG, in the house. What's up, Glenn?
Yeah.
Blessings and praise to you guys. You're talking about a favorite of mine, foodie subject, barbecue. I've been eating too much food as is. Let's get off this subject. Good to see you all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Glenn.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that I guess we can segue right into the fact that one of the things that we saw during this and what it exposed, of course, the differences between socioeconomic folk, racial groups, And certainly we did have, with the murder of George Floyd, we had the racial reckoning. Now, we had tremendous momentum early on. Have we lost some of that momentum? Glenn, you want to take on that?
I mean, well, I had initially an issue with the thought of sports coming back in the midst of the social justice movement. I was concerned that the platform wasn't going to, live up to the moment. I still have my doubts about how much was actually, I think there was some great symbolism shown. I think the WNBA, I thought the NBA did a competent job. I thought even the US Open did what they could. Thank God Naomi Osaka did what she did, on that landscape, and really taking a note from the WNBA and the players out in Milwaukee, who, when Jacob Blake was shot, needless to say, said, we're going to shut it down for tonight, and made a statement in that respect. I think obviously a lot more could have been done, a lot more pointed interviews and information could have been given out regarding the social justice movement around the world, because it was worldwide. So I think there was something lost in that respect. But look, it's up to us. I mean, this platform, what you and Bob are doing, what I try to do on my little show, the media is going to be the big player, and they have been. I mean, Fox News and that joke of a network is what's laid the groundwork for guys like, unfortunately, Donald Trump and hate radio and all of that nonsense. And 30 years of misinformation leads to the kind of, unfortunately, militias and hate groups and white supremacists that spring up and have life. So I think it's on all of us to call it out when we see it. And the movement's only going to last as long as we decide to make it last. So I'm very encouraged. I'm glad Black women are on this panel. Obviously, they're having their moment right now, and in full support of that. And so very excited about what 2021 will bring, as long as this vaccine doesn't kill us.
Dr. Butterfield.
I had a big conversation about that a little while. I mean, you see some of the pictures of the side effects. Some folks look, they had a minor stroke after taking this thing. So I'm not exactly.
There's many more people who have gotten the vaccine who've been okay than the ones that they're highlighting who've had the adverse.
I don't want to put out misinformation. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, as soon as they work out the allergy glitch, I'm standing up in line for this.
I'm right behind you.
I can't live like this for long term, and really, live in isolation is not how we're meant to live. So, so in addition, I'm the director of talent recruitment and management at a charter school here in New Haven, Connecticut, and I also, in my role, provide in-house racial equity work for my teaching staff. So I'm trained in the Courageous Conversations About Race protocol developed by Glenn Singleton about 25 years ago. And so what I found was that around the George Floyd murder, that there was, as you mentioned, this momentum gained of this sort of reckoning, like, oh my gosh, I see, once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? I do believe that the pandemic has impacted this in such a way that the momentum would still be there had we not been in this position of survival mode. The work that I provide, especially in this, using this protocol, it is not meant to be done virtually. And we've had to adjust to doing this virtually. But there's a different kind of energy and involvement and participation when you are in person, sitting there face to face with someone, having a conversation about race and racism, because they're two distinct terms, than it is in a virtual setting. In a virtual setting, you can get lost. And if you don't speak, you don't have to speak. And if I'm not on camera, if I don't scroll through to see everybody, I can kind of disconnect and not be part of the discussion. Whereas if someone, especially when I'm leading my sessions, if someone is quiet, I can kind of walk over and stand near them and sort of engage them in a way that you can't do that, virtually. So I do think that the pandemic has squashed that. But there are still pockets of people, despite the pandemic impacting that want to continue this work, whether it be in their volunteer organization or in their workplace, large and small, who are still interested in having this conversation, especially as it relates to their employees and, or in my case, their students.
I just want to jump in just to say, as much as this virtual world obviously has been tough in connecting, making that human connection on a personal level, it's the only reason that we're able to have this forum with people in disparate parts of the world.
Agree.
I mean, yes, and as you guys know, recent members of Clubhouse, that's put us in chat rooms with folks we'd never be able to sit across from. In many cases, I mean, from the top to the bottom, whatever. I mean, it's been a real godsend in the sense that we were able to hear voices and touch people that we couldn't actually get in the same room with if it wasn't for the pandemic.
Yeah. I would say in that forum, absolutely. In the teaching forum, you know, especially when I'm working with teachers about how you relate to Black and brown kids and what your teaching needs to look like, I need to be in front of you and I need to watch you teach, right? So that's lost a little bit. But I agree with you, Glenn. It has brought people together that who would have never been in the same rooms with one another.
No doubt.
Right.
Well, do we see us going back to normalcy? We have the vaccine, as you said, going back to normalcy.
Wait, how did you get the vaccine? You got the vaccine already?
No, not yet. Not yet. As a matter of fact, then NightWatchman knows right now. I'm waiting for my results just to let me know because I've been a little bit under the weather, so to speak. Okay.
Oh, I've heard this before. Okay. We'll keep an eye on you.
Thank you.
Don't start coughing now, though.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Why aren't you wearing a mask? No.
You know, when will we see some normalcy return? Are we talking about the middle of this year or what?
No.
No,
yeah, I don't think so either. I
Yeah,
mean,
why not?
Clear.
Say it again. Say it again.
Vernee.
Oh, I was saying Dr. Fauci was saying, and I don't think that this is going to happen because we have people who are still fighting the vaccine, that, you know, if 90% of the population were to get this vaccine, we would achieve herd immunity, right? But we know that 90% of the population does not believe in the vaccine. And we ourselves are skeptical because we know there's side effects. But it goes to show you that if in a global pandemic, we can respond differently and get rid of red tape to push a vaccine through quicker. Now, does it mean it's safer? We don't know that yet, right? We do know that people are experiencing adverse reactions to this, but if you have severe allergies like myself, I'm a little skeptical because I don't want to have to sit in a hospital, you know, post-vaccine and worry about for the next hour, am I going to make it? But, you know, at this point, I don't think that we're going to achieve that anytime soon in terms of the 90%. So there won't be any sense of normalcy. And if we open things up again to the extent that we did before over the summer, we'll be right back to square one, if not worse.
I think also we have to see some more transparency in terms of, first of all, every time they talk about the vaccine, I feel they're doing us a disservice because it's not one vaccine, it's several vaccines. They're coming from different manufacturers, and it's ridiculous to believe that they're all going to play out exactly the same way. So we know that Pfizer was first in the water, and Moderna was second in the water, and AstraZeneca is coming. And they're completely different vaccines. They're made in different ways. They have different handling protocols between them. And so we're going to need to start to see data about the first wave of people and which ones make sense, because one vaccine may make sense for one person, but not for the other. You know, whether you're talking about allergies, certainly the storage, the cold storage aspects of some of them are going to determine, you know, where those vaccines are going to be able to be deployed properly. So there's certainly many countries around the globe that will not be getting the Pfizer because they don't have the capabilities to handle 70 degrees below zero, whatever. One of the things they're not also mentioning, we don't hear a lot about, but the fact is that China and Russia also have their own vaccine solutions that they are pushing to various points in the globe, you know, and so it's a global land grab for one of the most biggest profit potential in the vaccine industry, you know, ever. And so it's another reason why people just want more transparency about who and what these vaccines are about, because literally all the risk is on the consumer and not the vaccine manufacturers. A lot of people are not aware of the fact that there's federal legislation that says the vaccine manufacturers cannot be sued.
Yeah,
correct.
So there's no liability. You know, we really need more than just promises that it's all going to be okay.
right.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think January 20th will have a different response. I know hope is not a strategy, but I do believe that there will be more transparency come January 20th.
No, January 6th. We better win those Georgia seats.
That's true. But
it won't make a difference on January 20th if we don't have them. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know in that regard. I mean, just in terms of
I know what you're saying.
Dr. Fauci being able to speak freely without there being.
Is he in witness protection? I mean, Dr. Fauci.
Right. I just think that I do believe that there will be a little bit more in terms of like what Bob is speaking to, the difference between what we'll see in these vaccines and reactions and so forth. It won't be a post that you read on Facebook and you're like, oh, somebody, you know, fell sick 20 minutes after receiving the vaccine. I think that there will be enough at the federal level where we'll see some more information coming.
Well, I just have to say from what Bob was saying, you know, the sad part is our pharmaceutical industry is set up so that everybody who creates a product distinguishes their product from their competitor's product with side effects. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So here we are with three, and Johnson & Johnson with a lifeline by the president, and they're still dealing with cancer suits. But they may be coming out with something. And like
they have one in play. GSK has one in play.
I mean, it's a crapshoot, and that's not what you want when you're talking about a worldwide pandemic where, you know, like you say, China, our adversaries, China and Russia are going to come out with product. You know, and Pfizer's like, look, we're sending stuff overseas. You know, you got other people that can get stuff to you. I mean, these guys are playing to the only line they know, which is the bottom line. All they care about are the profits, and sadly, the American citizens are getting the short end of it, and that's to put it lightly. I'm sorry, Angie, put that cup down and say something.
You know, I have very intentionally been staying a bit out of this aspect of the conversation because I feel that I'm not qualified. I feel that, you know, we've had a lot of unqualified people. I'm not talking about this call, but in the media in general, speaking on things for which they are not scientists, they're not doctors. And so, you know, for me, I know that I will take the vaccine when it's available to me. I will evaluate all, you know, aspects of allergic reactions and which, you know, vaccine I will take. But I agree with everything. Say it again.
You're on the record now.
Yeah,
but we're gonna take it.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, Len. She's never been an anti-vaxxer, you know. So I believe this. Go ahead, Angie.
But this is huge for the Harlem community, though. For you guys to put your stamp on it is important.
Right. I think that, you know, I want us to lead more with science and data.
Right. Yeah.
And that's hopefully what we will be getting with this new administration. No doubt.
Right. And with science and data, you still have to vet it because there's still a lot of sponsored science. And, you know, I hate the term anti-vaxxer because I know that there are people who are on the fringe who have a lot of conspiracy theories, but I think that there are legitimate reasons that anyone wants to take responsibility for anything this important in their health and should ask appropriate questions. You know, so, you know, when you say anti-vaxxer, I would definitely know that if I was going to Africa and I got to be vaccinated for yellow fever and malaria like that. With these vaccines, the fact that they're new technology, or what I should say, it's not new technology, but it's never been rolled out on this level of scale. So I just want to see more transparency, more more than just a feel good. Having somebody famous taking the vaccine on TV doesn't make me feel comfortable. It makes me feel more comfortable to know a little bit more about, how it was developed, what are the differences, what are the side effects, and so that, I can make an informed decision, everyone else can make informed decisions. And I think that process will play itself out over the next few months. And that obviously is going to determine a lot about how quickly we can come back from this pandemic. But the other thing is just habits, what are the protocols for going into public spaces these days? And there already have been changes. I've been there. There's a Kennedy Center here in Harlem, which is run by Catholic Charities. And, if you go in there now, the first thing you're going to do is they're going to check your temperature. They're going to have you sign in. But even with the sign in, they have an iPad, but they have little things where you can put on it so you don't have to touch the iPad with your finger. And there's hand sanitizer. And so these are the new habits that are going to become norms in terms of going to public spaces, and how well those things are adopted by people and how do we adapt is going to determine how soon we get back to a new standard. I don't like to say the new normal because I don't know that we'll ever have a normal, prior to 2019. I don't know that, but I do know that we're adaptable people. The fact that we see people wearing masks, if we were talking about masks in January of 2020, nobody was wearing a mask except for if you went out to Queens, there were Asians wearing masks before the pandemic hit. And I remember being out there and saying, wow, that's odd. And now that's the norm.
Well, I just got to say this, Bob, because this platform is important, and it's going to be more important because to me, and I've said this on several shows that we've done before, the media landscape in this country has too much influence being a for-profit entity. The mere fact that Fox could have a whole network, broadcast network, Fox Studios, for Rupert Murdoch, a foreigner, to own the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post and have so much influence over 73 million people doubled down on Donald Trump. The mere fact that if you've got a bully pulpit with that much influence, counter-arguing what Fauci is saying, whatever's being said, will we ever truly have the kind of information and useful information that people need to make smart decisions? We've got to change the media landscape. Corporate media does not work when it comes to things like this. They're still worried about ratings and profits. And we need useful information. We need information that's actually going to direct us in the right way. And we don't have that now. We can go to PBS, or we can go to C-SPAN, or we can go to alternative media. But that puts a lot of onus on citizens to do what should be natural for the country to succeed. We should have, unfortunately, media companies that are actually putting out accurate information that's been vetted and we can rely on. And unfortunately, with corporate media, we don't have that, and Fox News has too much influence. Sorry,
Glenn, I absolutely agree with you. However, we've also seen with these alternative media, from Newsmax to some of these other right wing, they're putting out this, Breitbart, putting out this disinformation. Lies, fabrications. How do you
We've got to
counteract
demand
that?
better as citizens. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
So what does that look like? Are you advocating for more public ownership or control of media?
I'm glad you asked. No, I'm just saying, the bottom line is we've got to get rid of a number of things. The Electoral College, campaign finance has got to be changed. Corruption and all of these things reside around one thing: making as much money as possible. The duopoly of our electoral system, all of the stuff that just is corrupted by money. And the mere fact that the Fourth Estate, which is giving these airwaves for free, are making zillions of dollars. And consequently, we're stuck with infotainment now, which is more tabloid than anything else. People run with stories. We're more influenced by, TikTok and videos that are posted up than real, concerned journalism. I mean, 60 Minutes tries to do something with regards to whistleblowing, but they have an hour show once a week. And not that that's not tainted at all, but we need more. Yeah, and I'm sorry, to get to your point. Yes, we need publicly funded, if that's how it's going to be, TV that has no corporate line for advertisers or any kind of profitability. That's just going to give us Ed Morrow giving us the real rock solid news that we have to have. I'm sorry. I just had
wow, you went back to Ed Morrow.
That's the last time we probably had an advocate on the news side, sadly. but I mean, I think we have to restructure what we consider media and what we consider entertainment, or at least media that's effective for us. Go ahead.
And we also have to look a lot more at media ownership, because it's not just Rupert Murdoch. It's obviously Sinclair Broadcasting.
Yes.
They've been, but even look at who owns the Washington Post and who owns Newsweek. It's Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
So there's always an agenda. They're just different agendas. And so I think Bezos has very, he's positioned himself so that he's got an outlet that you might consider them more liberal, but they're going to support all of the best interests that he has, which is Amazon. And when we look at the transfer of wealth that happened during the pandemic, it's staggering. It's trillions that went to people who already had trillions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you notice and whatnot that there was this one particular scandal about Purdue and Loeffler as it relates to being in a private briefing related to the pandemic, dumping some stock, but then investing and buying more Zoom and other stocks that were definitely going to be beneficial during this particular time.
Yeah.
I think Bob Woodward was in that meeting too. I think he was in there. Sorry.
Some thoughts on that. I mean, because I hear exactly what you're saying, Glenn. But 73 million plus folks have, they don't care about the truth here. And
but that is the legacy of Fox. I mean, that is the legacy of Roger Ailes and this cabal that was a frat house that was, misogynist led. I mean, it was an absolute cluster at Fox. And they got away with murder. And the saddest part is their influence over the rest of what is supposed to be the objective media. Everybody looked at them when Barack Obama was running and saying, wait, you guys are giving him a free pass. This is the liberal elites. And what did they do? MSNBC said, we need some conservatives on our station. We need some people to push back because Fox has this huge following of mostly white supremacists, but not just white supremacists. But the sad part is that they have influence because they have ratings. And unfortunately, the rest of the folks just said, okay, you know what? We need to tag along and push back, even if it's not in the best interest of the citizens. But we're going to give this air. I mean, you've got these conservative knuckleheads from the Bush administration, all these losers. I mean, you got Dick Cheney still being put on camera and asking his opinion about anything. I'm like, how does Nicole Wallace get a 2-hour show every night after pushing Bush and then trying to sell a Sarah Palin? But she gets a prominent show, and Joy Reid's got to fight on the weekends and do all this stuff just to finally get an opening once Chris Matthews opens his mouth too much. It's ridiculous. So,
Well, because racism and classism prevail, right?
I heard about that. Yeah.
A little bit, right?
That's what we're facing, though. That's what we have to fight against it.
Well, one of the things that also has been revealed has been the educational discrepancies. What have you observed, Vernee, in terms of the work that you do? Because certainly haves and have-nots as it relates to broadband and other things.
Worsened by the pandemic for sure, right? But brought out the inequities that were already there, right? And so take Zoom, for example, or this virtual platform. Other countries and internet based schools have been doing this for years and years and years. And it just shows that this country is so much further behind, right? In that regard. And so schools that were already doing that or organizations that were already doing that, that was an easy transition to go full virtual in that regard. For schools like mine, right, where not everybody had a computer, but we were able to do that with grants and donors. It still did not speak to, I don't have Wi-Fi in my house, right? And so, again, sitting here and waiting for elected officials to, hey, we need that broadband and that infrastructure, that's going to be like watching grass grow. So if you have organizations that can do like the Austin School District in Texas, where they put vans in neighborhoods that were Wi-Fi capable 8 to 2 so that children could access their school day, right? Those are the local organizations and things that we should be pushing for as opposed to waiting for Superman. And so, again, bringing out what those inequities were, right? The other side of this was that we've coupled this sort of notion of a virtual platform with the ramifications or sort of effects of a pandemic. People are depressed. People are losing jobs, right? They are trying to balance their homes. Their kids are home all the time as well. And so being a parent, in my mind, is very different than I'm now a parent and a teacher. You are a parent, you are a teacher as a parent in that sense of I raise my child. But the academic side of that is very, very different. And so, and the relationship you have with your child and the dynamic that you have with your child is also different from what you would see in a school setting, right? How many times do we get called home and your kid does something at school and you're like, what? Right? Or you're like, yeah, it kind of does that at home too, right? So we had that going on. But in terms of what this has done, the inequities in education are going to be so extreme. But I would rather keep my kids home right now than for people to be dead and then we can't catch kids up at all, right? And that's where I am in terms of this whole thing, this push to get our kids back to school and reopen. In some parts of the country, schools have been open the entire time, 100%, right? And the kids, schools were petri dishes before the pandemic. And so add that notion to it now, I think it's far, far worse. And I don't know if, again, what Angie was speaking to earlier in terms of putting that pressure on our elected officials locally, especially to start to address some of those inequities with a far greater reach and really being innovative with some of these larger organizations that already exist, right? So from now on, our schools should have some aspect of internet or virtual platforms. And we should be making sure our students and our scholars know how to work with those kinds of devices. It should not be that I get to college and I've never typed a paper before and I don't know how to type, right? So we should be making sure our students can be able to do those things just to simply compete. And at this point, just to simply get an education right now.
But that's the sad part, is that public education has fallen off a cliff at the same time that we prop up this celebrity-driven media who has no interest in doing anything but basically leading us off of cliff. I mean, we have folks who are literally wasting time discussing what celebrity A was doing with celebrity B,
right.
Half the time, whether it's news or otherwise. And when you do that, yes, the undergraduate class, or the high school from K to 12, I should say, ends up being 50th in the world.
Right.
Charter schools, aren't they saving us? No, they're not saving us.
No, they're not.
It's just have and have-nots again.
Agree.
It's profit-driven stuff that's taking money out of the public school system.
Well, that's a misnomer. Because I work for a charter school. That's a misnomer.
Oh, you're the source. Okay, so that's a misnomer in the sense of what? They don't take public school money?
They receive public funding, but they also, remember, a lot of them have these big donors behind them that can offset the cost that they need in their particular school. So they're not stealing funds, right?
Well, wait a second now. Wait. But part of that public funding would normally go to public schools, correct?
But it's not being taken away. It's still equally distributed. I
don't know how that's possible. You got a pot of money. If some of it's going somewhere else, then it's not going to public schools, correct? Or am I crazy?
We'll talk offline.
Isn't it great that Mike Bloomberg spent $500 million for that vanity campaign Could he have paid for Wi-Fi in every school area in the country?
Yes,
Perhaps, but there's still the other side of
Uh-oh.
in my home. Am I able to even get Wi-Fi? Right?
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of different sort of things at play and disparities at play, but at the very root of this, we still need to be. Let me backtrack. Charter schools wouldn't exist if public schools weren't failing. Some public schools, right? So the restoration of the initial part of the movement was that some of the public schools that weren't doing well were paired with a charter school that was doing well and then could help raise the improvement. That was the cause of the movement.
That sounds like, public or I guess federal prisons would be doing better if we just had some private prisons that would show them the way.
No,
That's the same thing.
no, that's not
I'm sorry, but
not even close to the same thing.
Like it was a conversation.
Yeah. That was not the cause or the birth of the charter school movement. It was
somebody's making money
model,
on the
right?
charter school. Somebody's making money. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, definitely, and that's why I guess with let's say someone like Eva Moskowitz had were vilified because of that, because literally we knew that it was
the teachers union was vilified, which the right love to do. I mean, we've decimated unions in this country, right to work and all that nonsense. The teaching profession has been vilified for years. If you can't, those who can't teach, that's ridiculous. I mean,
I know some great teachers and I know some not so great teachers.
No question. And
I don't think that you deserve to stay in the role when you're not a not so great teacher, right?
And so
at the end of the day, you are harming children who look like us, who we are saying simply need to have a seat where we are. I do believe that we need to not create or perpetuate this divide of charter versus public, when at the end of the day, we just need to have great teachers who know how to teach and can actually provide a quality education. I don't care which setting it's in, just make sure that it's happening in all settings. And we're not even remotely close to that, right?
But when you have parents fighting for spots in these schools because they think it's some panacea, once again, the public is left high and dry. I'm sorry, just fighting amongst themselves, squabbling for scraps. I'm sorry.
Well, and I think the squabbling of which is better and which is different, right? Those are moot points when at the end of the day, we just need to be educating our children. Our school system in this country is not strong, right? Mm-hmm. And so to sit here and profess that it is, and it is in pockets, but it clearly is not in pockets for everyone. It's not in everyone's pocket. And to have access to that level of education is not the same for everyone. We should have stronger teacher ed programs where our people are becoming teachers. We should have stronger professional development so our veteran teachers aren't sitting there just pushing paper and getting things done. We should not be pushing kids forward when they are not ready to be pushed forward, right? If you are not reading by age 9, by the 3rd grade, you should not be in the 6th grade reading at a 3rd grade level. That is a fundamental problem. And we can't keep doing the same things and expecting different results and saying, well, why aren't our kids learning? We know why, right? We just aren't putting in the measures to make any improvements in that regard.
But what's the recalibration though? How does that get reestablished on some meaningful level?
I'm a little extreme, but I believe in shutting it down and revamping the system.
All right. We're in the wrap-up mode. It's surprisingly how quick this hour went.
Wait a second, I wasn't on for an hour.
You came in. Sorry. You can go back and listen to it. But to give us an opportunity to extend this conversation, we are going to carry on. So those who are listening to us either live on WHCR or on our YouTube premiere, you can join us on Clubhouse for the first time with our Soul Lounge on Clubhouse. We're launching it for the new year, so people can join us and
you're welcome.
Join in. Yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
The man with the invites. So, any final thoughts on 2021, the state of Black America in 2021, the state of America and the world?
I just want to say one more thing about education, because we've been talking about vaccines and everything else.
Sure.
The mere fact, I have a doctor cousin who allowed her son to be given Ritalin because he was a little bit, hype. Super smart kid, but the influx of pharmaceuticals into the public education system has been an absolute nightmare. I mean, and I don't know what the distribution has been in terms of who's the medical professional that's evaluating these kids, but they've been flooded. These pharmaceutical companies have been making a fortune putting these drugs in our system, and it's an absolute crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vernee, some parting thoughts?
Charter school? I'm sorry.
You ain't right. Listen, improve all schools, then we wouldn't need them. I think for 2021, I remain hopeful but cautious. And, in regards to education, the divide is going to be so deep as a result of our current, pandemic, that it's going to take a long time for us to regain the momentum or progress that we would like to see in our students and in our education system. I'm hopeful with our new Secretary of Education. He's from here in Connecticut. I know him.
Yep.
So we shall see. But I can remain hopeful, but cautiously optimistic.
Beautiful. Ange.
I would agree with that. I'm hopeful as well. And I feel that our next step is accountability. Let's hold everyone accountable for our votes. And let's start putting in some very strong and measurable KPIs to ensure that everything that was highlighted during the pandemic, the disparities in education, healthcare, access to opportunities, that we are taking those steps and we're going to hold these people accountable for what's been promised to us.
Excellent.
Yeah, very good.
Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, I think to all of this, I just think, things that have been said before, authenticity is the realm in Clubhouse, if you will. The mere fact that until we get the corruption out of our system in terms of these, consistently reinstated elected officials who never do anything to change. I mean, thankfully we had that wave of progressives in 2018, but until we get money out of the system, until we can have average Americans who could contribute, be able to run and succeed and represent their constituency, as opposed to these millionaires who sit in Congress and do absolutely nothing for anybody. The AOCs of the world, I don't say they have all the answers, but progressive things, I mean, to what, I'm sorry, charter school, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Vernee.
Vernee. I'm sorry, Vernee, I apologize. But to what she's speaking about, the changes that need to be made on such a grassroots level, we're never going to get it out of these elected officials who have no interest in anything but corporate lobbying and taking money and just, generating this cycle every 2 years of getting reelected. All they do is do fundraisers to run again. We need people who are actually coming out of the community, who have a vested stake in what happens. And until that happens, almost nothing else will change.
All right.
I'm hopefully optimistic. I'm optimistic.
Well, thank you all for joining us, getting the year started off on a good foot. And we're all cautiously optimistic, but we all still have a lot of work to do in this one.
Absolutely.
So thank you. And
Curtis,
who want to continue the conversation, join us on Clubhouse.
Yes. Thank you, guys.